TIFU by being the family scapegoat, ending up homeless and then striking it rich. Hey Reddit, longtime lurker, first time poster here. I've read so many incredible stories on this sub, and I figured it's time to share mine. It's a bit of a roller coaster, so bear with me. I grew up in what looked like an average family from the outside. My parents, my older brother Mike, and me. But behind closed doors, things were a bit different. My parents played favorites, and Mike was the golden child. He could do no wrong, while I was always the scapegoat. If something went missing, I was blamed. If Mike failed a test, it was somehow my fault for distracting him. You get the idea. It wasn't just the blame game. They showered Mike with affection and attention, while I got the cold shoulder. Birthdays, holidays, you name it. Mike got the best gifts, the biggest celebrations. I tried my best to win their approval, but nothing ever changed. It was like I was invisible unless they needed someone to blame. I did well in school, hoping that good grades would make them notice me, but they never seemed to care. Mike, on the other hand, got mediocre grades and still received praise and encouragement. The favoritism was blatant, and it hurt like hell. My teachers noticed my situation, but any attempts to intervene were brushed off by my parents, who painted me as the problem child. When I turned 18, things hit a breaking point. I'd gotten a scholarship to a decent university, but my parents refused to support me. They said they couldn't afford it, even though they'd just bought Mike a brand new car for his birthday. I realized then that staying was only going to destroy me, so I packed my things and left. The night I left, I didn't even get a goodbye or good luck from them, just cold stares. Without any support, I quickly ran out of money. I tried to find a job but without a permanent address or experience, it was nearly impossible. I ended up on the streets, sleeping in shelters and eating at soup kitchens. It was the darkest time of my life. I felt abandoned, hopeless, and utterly alone. Nights were the worst. The cold, the fear of being attacked, and the constant hunger gnawed at me. I'd often wonder if I'd made a huge mistake by leaving, but I knew deep down I had no other choice. One day, while wandering the city, I stumbled upon a public library. It became my refuge. I spent my days there reading everything I could get my hands on. I particularly loved books on business and technology. They gave me a sense of purpose and a glimmer of hope. The librarians got to know me and would often let me stay even past closing hours to finish my reading. They never pried into my situation, but always offered a kind smile or a warm cup of coffee. I saved up what little money I could from odd jobs and eventually managed to get a cheap laptop. I started teaching myself coding through free online courses. It was tough, but I was determined. I'd spend hours at the library, learning everything I could about programming and web development. I found a community online where other self-taught coders shared resources and advice. It was the first time in a long while that I felt connected to others. After a couple of years of hard work and perseverance, I managed to land a freelance gig. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I worked my ass off, taking on any project I could find. Slowly but surely, my reputation grew. Clients started recommending me, and I began to build a steady stream of work. I was finally able to afford a tiny studio apartment. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and it felt like a palace compared to the shelters. One of my clients, a startup founder, saw potential in me and offered me a full-time job with stock options. I jumped at the opportunity. The company took off, and so did my career. Within a few years, I was not only financially stable, but thriving. I invested wisely, bought a small apartment, and finally felt secure. The transformation was incredible. I went from worrying about my next meal to planning investments and vacations. Eventually, the startup went public, and my stock options turned into a small fortune. I was officially rich. It was surreal. I went from being homeless and hopeless to living a life I'd never dreamed possible. I didn't flaunt my wealth, though. I remembered what it felt like to have nothing and wanted to use my success to help others. I reached out to shelters and organizations that had helped me during my toughest times, donating money and time to support others in similar situations. It felt good to give back, to use my success to make a positive impact. I started a scholarship fund for underprivileged youth who had the brains but not the means to pursue their education. Watching them succeed became my greatest joy. As for my parents and Mike, I never heard from them again. I don't harbor any ill will towards them anymore. Their treatment of me was painful, but it also made me resilient. It forced me to find my own path and build a life on my terms. I realized that while their neglect was cruel, it was the catalyst for my eventual success. It made me self reliant and driven in ways I might never have been otherwise. One day, I received a message on social media from an old neighbor. They'd heard about my success and wanted to reconnect. Through them, I learned that Mike had squandered all the opportunities given to him. He was living back at home, unemployed and directionless. My parents had retired and were struggling financially, having put all their eggs in Mike's basket. They'd never reached out to me, probably out of pride or shame. It was a strange feeling learning about their downfall. I felt a mix of sadness and relief. I was sad that they hadn't learned from their mistakes, but relieved that I had managed to escape and build a better life for myself. I considered reaching out, but ultimately decided against it. I had moved on, and reopening that chapter of my life wouldn't benefit anyone. So here I am, a free man, sharing this story with a bunch of strangers on Reddit. If you're ever in a spot where running seems like the only option, just remember, you can't outrun yourself. But sometimes, if you're lucky, you can find a way to rise above your circumstances and build a life you're proud of. And if you do, don't let the past hold you back. Use it as fuel to keep pushing forward.